Imagine sitting in the back of a taxi, gripping your phone, your knuckles just completely white.
Mm-hmm.
You're terrified for your safety, and you are frantically texting your mother the license plate number of the car, just in case you disappear.
It's a terrifying thought.
It really is. But millions of people in Southeast Asia didn't just have to imagine that scenario. I mean, it was literally their daily commute.
Yeah, everyday reality.
Exactly. So today we are looking at how a $40 billion empire was built not in some, pristine corporate boardroom, but out of that exact visceral fear. Welcome to the deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So our source material today is this really fascinating document titled What a Boarder Can Learn from Hooi Ling. And at first glance, this text is framed as advice for boarding school students. It uses the microcosm of a boarding house to explore how people share systems and navigate daily friction.
Right, but there's a lot more to it. Oh, totally. Our mission today is to crack this document open and extract these universal blueprints for innovation, for quiet leadership, and for solving incredibly complex problems. Blueprints that apply directly to your own life, your career, and how you observe the world around you.
And I think we really need to emphasize the scale of what we are analyzing today.
Right.
Because it is staggering. We are tracing the origins of Grab.
Right.
Grab. And for context, if you aren't familiar, Grab is the super app that essentially serves as the digital infrastructure for 8 different countries in Southeast Asia.
It's massive.
Unbelievably massive. It has over 46 million monthly active users. It handles ride-hailing, food delivery, digital payments, financial services. I mean, it is an inescapable part of daily life there.
Yeah, you literally can't navigate the region without it.
Exactly. Yet, as the text points out, this sprawling tech behemoth did not begin with a grand vision of market dominance. It actually began as a desperate coping mechanism. Okay, let's unpack this. Because to truly understand the origin of this company, we have to look at Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, back before Grab even existed.
Right.
Hooi Ling was working there as a management consultant, and she was pulling these brutal hours, frequently leaving the office late at night and facing a stark reality getting home was a gamble.
Well, and the source material notes that this wasn't just generalized anxiety either. At the time, if you looked up the world's worst taxi experiences, Kuala Lumpur consistently ranked at the absolute top of those global internet searches.
Wow, the very top.
Yeah, the local industry had a deeply documented history of severe safety incidents, rampant overcharging, and systemic unreliability. She was experiencing this profound vulnerability every single night she worked late.
So she's just trying to get home from work.
Right, but she didn't instantly draft a brilliant tech startup business plan to solve it. Instead, she and her mother developed what she called a manual GPS system.
The manual GPS. I love this. Let's break down what that actually looked like in practice because it's so relatable but also so wild.
Yeah, it really is.
Every single time she got into a cab, she would pull out her phone and manually text her mother the license plate number. And then, as the taxi moved through the dark city, she would text updates whenever she passed a major landmark.
Just to give her mother a rough coordinate system to track her location.
And her mother would stay awake, staring at her phone, until Hooi Ling walked safely through the front door. I mean, this was their nightly ritual.
Every single night.
She actually has a quote in the text that captures the emotional toll of this perfectly. She said, "I felt constrained, and I could never really go where I wanted to because I was afraid of taxi drivers. I really was, and even when I wasn't, my parents were."
It's just exhausting to live like that.
Oh, completely. But let's be honest, texting your mom landmark updates isn't a scalable tech solution. It's a Band-Aid.
Right, it doesn't fix the taxi industry.
Exactly. It's like instead of installing a centralized security system in your home, you rig up a string of bells to your front door using yarn and duct tape.
That's a great way to put it.
You do it to survive a broken system, but it doesn't fix the underlying danger. So how does a desperate, incredibly inefficient workaround actually translate into the architecture for a regional super app?
Well, that coping mechanism is exactly where the breakthrough happens. I mean, great innovation rarely demands a spontaneous, original idea conjured out of thin air.
It's not usually a light bulb moment in the shower.
No, not at all. It usually starts with careful, honest observation of an ordinary problem that someone simply refuses to tolerate anymore. The duct tape solution proves there is a desperate market need.
Because people are already doing the work.
Exactly. If people are willing to endure the high friction of a manual GPS, staying awake until midnight to track text messages, they're crying out for a systemic cure.
So the manual GPS was essentially a diagnostic tool. It proved the system was fundamentally flawed.
Yes.
But diagnosing a broken infrastructure and actually having the power to rewire it are two completely different things. Identifying the fear was just the first step.
Right.
To actually cure the system, she needed to know how to build a solution from the ground up. And she learned how to do that, not by studying business administration first, but in an engineering lab in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, and to trace how she acquired those building tools, we have to look at her academic foundation.
Let's do it.
She grew up in a middle-class Chinese-Malaysian family, and her father was a civil engineer, which provided a foundational influence on how she viewed the world.
Makes sense.
She was naturally drawn to people who understood the mechanics of how complex systems functioned, people who could design structural solutions to practical problems.
She had that engineering mindset from day one.
Exactly. And she followed that inclination all the way to the University of Bath in the UK to study mechanical engineering.
And according to our source, the real pivot point in her development doesn't happen in a university lecture hall. It happens during an industrial placement year at Eli Lilly, the major pharmaceutical company.
Right. She goes to work at their facility in Basingstoke.
Yeah, as an equipment engineer, she arrives as this highly talented engineering student doing really precise technical work. But while she is there on the factory floor, she has this epiphany about power and design that completely alters her trajectory. She looks around the facility and realizes that while the technical experts, like the engineers, were brilliant at executing tasks, the managers were the ones actually making the structural decisions.
They were pulling the strings.
Right. The management level was dictating the organization's priorities and shaping its ultimate direction.
And that changes everything for her.
Wait, can we pause on that for a second?
Sure.
Isn't it a bit disheartening to realize that being a brilliant technical expert isn't enough? I mean, does this mean technical skills simply take a back seat to corporate maneuvering?
Well,
Because framing it that way makes it sound like she's just, abandoning the hard science to go play office politics.
see, what's fascinating here is that she didn't view it as a surrender of her engineering principles at all. Yeah, she didn't abandon the hard science. She realized its limitations when applied in isolation. The realization she had was entirely about scope.
Scope, okay, explain that.
Think about it this way. In mechanical engineering, if a gear fails, you don't just replace the gear blindly. You look at the torque and the tension of the entire machine.
Right, you look at the system.
Exactly. She recognized that if she stayed purely on the technical engineering track, she would spend her entire career building isolated components for solutions that other people designed.
Ah, she didn't want to just be a cog in the machine.
She wanted to design the entire solution.
So she needed a broader diagnostic mindset. She wanted to dictate the blueprint, not just manufacture the parts.
Precisely. And the text refers to this as developing adaptive intelligence. She realized she needed to layer business strategy directly on top of her technical foundation.
Adaptive intelligence, that's a great term.
It's taking that rigorous mechanical engineering mindset, understanding torque, load, systemic stress, and applying it to a business ecosystem.
Which is exactly what she does later with the taxis.
Yes. She looked at the taxi industry later on not simply as an issue of bad drivers, but as a broken machine with severely misaligned incentives. To fix the torque of that industry, she needed fluency in both mechanical reality and business strategy.
That combination makes perfect sense. And it's that exact dual fluency that leads McKinsey and Company to hire her as a management consultant in Malaysia right out of undergrad.
Right.
Because they see someone who can diagnose a nebulous business problem with the cold rigor of an engineer.
And McKinsey invests in that potential heavily. They actually sponsor her to go get her MBA at Harvard Business School.
Wow.
Yeah. And this is where the structural foundation she built in the UK finally meets that visceral problem she experienced back in Kuala Lumpur.
Because it's at Harvard in 2011 that she meets a fellow Malaysian student, Anthony Tan.
Right.
They're grouped together for a business pitch activity. And instead of brainstorming some abstract theoretical product just to impress their professors, they draw directly on that manual GPS experience.
They map out a business plan for a ride-hailing app.
Explicitly designed to dismantle the safety and reliability nightmares of the Malaysian taxi industry.
Exactly. And they enter the Harvard Business School New Venture competition, and they win the runner-up prize.
Which comes with $25,000.
Yeah, and that prize money combined with their own personal savings, becomes the seed capital for what they initially called MyTechSea, the platform that eventually evolves into Grab.
So consider her position at this exact moment. She has the validation from Harvard, she has the initial seed funding, she has a driven co-founder, and she has a highly refined concept aimed at a desperate, proven market need.
It's the dream scenario.
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting. Because if we follow the standard Silicon Valley narrative, this is the exact moment the dramatic music swells.
Oh, yeah, the movie montage.
Yes, the montage kicks in, she drops out of everything, moves into a windowless garage, and goes all in on the startup. I mean, it's the classic move fast and break things mythology.
Totally.
But she does the exact opposite.
She absolutely defies that stereotype. After graduating from Harvard in 2011, she does not immediately pour herself full-time into building Grab.
Nope.
Instead, she goes back to McKinsey.
She returns to her day job.
Yeah.
Which feels entirely counterintuitive when you have a winning, funded startup idea in your hands. Like, why would you do that?
Well, it wasn't a lack of belief in the product. It was strategic risk mitigation. And it was rooted in a deep sense of obligation.
Obligation to McKinsey.
Yeah, McKinsey had sponsored her Harvard MBA,
Wow.
and she had made a firm commitment to them in return.
Wow.
And going back to honor that bond wasn't just a brief symbolic stint either. After McKinsey, she actually moved to San Francisco to work at Salesforce.
So she's still in the corporate world.
Yes. For years, she built Grab entirely in the margins of her corporate life.
Building in the margins. So what did that look like?
It meant utilizing her holiday time to fly back to Kuala Lumpur. It meant working brutal evenings and sacrificing weekends. The text vividly describes her operating out of a tiny free storage room during those early years.
A free storage room.
Yeah. Meticulously handling the strategy, the product planning, and the operational blueprints for a company she couldn't even give her full daylight hours to yet. She didn't officially step into the role of full-time chief operating officer at Grab until 2015.
2015?
Right, only after her prior corporate commitments were fully ethically discharged.
That is just wild to me. Keeping her day job while building Grab is like, it's like keeping your ship firmly tethered to a solid dock while you build out the engine room.
That's a really good analogy.
Because she wasn't relying on the startup to pay her rent or feed her in those crucial early years. So she wasn't forced into a corner. She wasn't making desperate short-term decisions just to appease early investors or hit artificial growth metrics. She could afford to build the architecture correctly without the panic of financial ruin hanging over her head.
That is a crucial insight. By maintaining her corporate anchor until the precise moment of maximum leverage, she de-risked a highly volatile venture.
Yeah, it's so smart.
Furthermore, this brings up the source text's profound emphasis on unshakable integrity.
Yes, honoring that McKinsey commitment.
Exactly. Honoring a commitment to an employer, even when a potentially billion-dollar idea is pulling you away, isn't just a nice moral victory. It is the absolute foundation of trust.
Trust is huge.
If you are going to ask millions of people to trust you with their physical safety in vehicles and with their digital financial data, you have to be the kind of person who honors their bonds.
Oh, that's such a powerful point. She completely redefines what ambition looks like. You don't have to torch your existing life or abandon your obligations to build something revolutionary.
No, you don't.
But it does require a relentless, quiet dedication to play the long game.
And that quiet dedication, strategizing in a free storage room while working a full-time job, directly translates to the type of leader she became once she fully took the reins as COO.
Which shatters another incredibly pervasive myth in the business world, the myth of what a highly successful tech founder is supposed to look and sound like.
Oh, definitely.
We are conditioned to believe the leader is always the loudest voice in the room, right?
Yeah.
The one claiming the most space, constantly stepping in front of the cameras to evangelize the brand.
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, corporate culture frequently equates leadership with performance. We confuse extroversion with competence.
Yes.
But Hooi Ling, who served as COO until she stepped down in 2023, is a self-described introvert.
An introvert running a $40 billion company.
Exactly. Throughout her entire tenure, she deliberately kept a much lower public profile than her co-founder, Anthony Tan.
Okay, so how did they split the dynamic?
He was the external face. He handled the investor relations, the aggressive media appearances, the public pitches, and she was perfectly content with that arrangement.
Right, because she was obsessing over the internal dimensions. While he was out pitching the vision, she was building the operational architecture.
The actual product.
The product itself, human resources, customer support. She was making sure the gears of the machine actually turned and didn't grind to a halt under the weight of hypergrowth.
And the counterintuitive takeaway here is that introverts are uniquely suited to scale these massive tech platforms.
Oh, interesting. Why is that?
Because their focus isn't on the performative aspect of leadership or feeding a founder's ego. It's focused on the user's quiet experience. When your primary product is safety and reliability, literally getting someone home without fear, you need an architect who obsesses over the unglamorous internal mechanics of the system rather than the spotlight.
So what does this all mean for you?
Yeah.
If you are listening to this, and you're the kind of person who doesn't naturally seek the spotlight, who processes things internally rather than thinking out loud in every single meeting, it is incredibly easy to feel sidelined by louder colleagues.
It really is.
But Tan Hooi Ling's trajectory proves that a company isn't what it pitches on stage. It is how it operates in the dark. The work that truly holds an organization together is almost always deeply unglamorous. It is the careful, quiet calibration of the system.
And as she gained immense influence through that quiet calibration, she utilized her position to alter the system even further.
Oh yeah, this is a great part of her story.
She didn't seek a platform just to be heard, but when she had accumulated one, she used it to advocate for systemic efficiency and fairness.
Right.
She became a prominent champion for gender diversity in the tech industry. She actively worked within Grab to increase the proportion of women in leadership roles and to mandate equal pay.
She also spoke openly about the unique structural challenges facing working mothers, pushing for workplaces that respond with genuine flexibility rather than just, empty corporate buzzwords.
Exactly.
And what's crucial to understand is that this wasn't just performative activism, it was an extension of her engineering mindset.
That's right.
Inequality and burnout are systemic inefficiencies. They drain top talent from the machine.
It all traces back to those early habits of observation and adaptive intelligence we discussed. Whether she was analyzing a dangerous taxi industry in Kuala Lumpur, a pharmaceutical manufacturing line in the UK, or an unequal corporate workplace, her fundamental approach remained exactly the same.
Diagnose the friction, understand the underlying mechanics, and build a better architecture.
Precisely.
It is a staggering journey to step back and absorb. I mean, from a terrified young professional texting her mother landmark by landmark in the back of a taxi to architecting the essential daily infrastructure for hundreds of millions of people across 8 countries.
Really incredible.
I want to leave you with a quote from her that captures the immense stamina required for this kind of building. She said, "It all boils down to how much you love what you are doing. There will be challenges and non-believers at first, but celebrate every milestone, however small."
And I think this raises an important question to leave with today.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Think critically about your own daily routines and the friction you simply endure. What manual GPS system are you currently operating in your life or your career?
Ooh, that's a great question.
What incredibly inefficient duct tape workaround have you simply accepted as normal? And could diagnosing that friction be the structural blueprint for your next great breakthrough?
Stop accepting the string of bells and start looking at the torque of the machine. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the extraordinary blueprints of Tan Hooi Ling. We'll catch you next time.